BigJackFilms here, and welcome to the audio commentary for Star Wars Return of the New Empire, part of the BigJackFilms storyline compilation. It's May the 4th, 2022, and I figured I'd give you something Star Wars related this time around. I know you guys are heavily patient for the prequel trilogy, but I figured I'd at least give you something here because we are still working on it because of COVID and all that shit. So anyway, let's get started. This episode was part of Season 4's storyline, I believe. It takes place after the Mask of Zorro episode. And the first thing I should bring up is the Lucasfilm logo of BigJackFilms. This was provided by my buddy Mason McCleary in Australia. And this joke, I knew when we were starting this, I had to do a reference to the Force Awakens premiere, where somebody did actually flash in front of the camera during opening night, and somebody said, "Turn off the flash, you fucking moron," and just hit right there, and that became a running gag with the entire trilogy, which we are going to carry on in later installments of reviewing the entire saga. So, the title crawl, of course, what's a Star Wars episode without a title crawl? The only issue is copyright. So, nowadays I basically get, like, covers of the theme, so that way I can evade copyright as much as possible. For those who don't know, this is a concept that I've had since I was a kid to kind of... Basically, any Star Wars movie you ever look forward to coming out, you always have the idea of the movie in your head, and that's something I'm going to carry on with mostly the prequels and the sequel trilogy when I get to it. But I figured if I'm going to be covering the original trilogy, I'd be like, how can I condense it all into, like, one story? So, this kind of goes all the way back to, like, 20 years ago when I wrote this stuff on a notebook, and that's sort of where it leads to here. I just found a way to put it into my show. And yeah, in terms of interesting enough with this, with my show and Star Wars, it actually does, in my opinion, take place in the Star Wars canonical timeline, except it takes place about maybe 50 to 100 years after Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. I know people have issues with the sequel trilogy, but I do try to respect the current Lucasfilm lore so everybody knows what the hell's going on in the plot. So, of course, we had to open it up with the parody of the intro to Episode 4, A New Hope. A lot of the effects in this one were pretty interesting for this time around, because this even, I think, predates before the 100th episode that we did for Dragon Ball Evolution. So this was pretty innovative to get these kind of effects, and it's one of our most ambitious BigJackFilms reviews we've ever done with the amount of effects and people involved, and it's going to get higher with the prequels. So this is just a mass shot of the scene from Episode 4 with the Star Destroyer coming in, and they're actually coming through a fictional dimensional portal through space, because we actually established in a couple of early episodes that the Kaiju Guard, which is the satellite orbiting space, had been detecting stuff from there, so all this was sent over through a bunch of different black hole energy to get to Earth's atmosphere. Now, we wanted to do this whole scene out of Rogue One, so interesting how this episode came about, because we wanted to do this for the 40th anniversary of Star Wars in 1977. And at the time, we kind of were a little late to the party, because Rogue One had just come out, and it is by far the best thing Disney has done in their era of Star Wars. So we wanted to just mimic the scene from Rogue One, because it is so iconic. You could stick this in the opening of Episode 4 and not miss a beat, and get sort of the feeling of what Vader is. So this is just me and Evan as Imperial Troopers, because we didn't have much access to many extras. And we have our Darth Vader suit provided wonderfully by Josh and Gamer64, who does an amazing Darth Vader cosplay, and that was utilized for the majority of the production. Now, one thing I did want to do throughout is combine a mix of both digital effects and models as much as possible, because I do respect both eras of the original and prequel trilogy, where they use both practical special effects and digital effects, so it all depended on what the shots were and what I was aiming for. So the idea with this escape pod is that it's kind of an escape pod, but like a mini one that crashes on my front lawn and has prints of the original trilogy. The idea that the reason you can't get the original trilogy in our timeline is because Lucasfilm had sent it to a station up in space anonymously, so the Rebels got a hold of it and said, oh, send this guy over, he'll be able to help us. It's very kind of convoluted, but it does kind of make sense in a way in my own universe. So, the meteor crash was interesting because the way this all came about, the fallen tree, like the branch with the burning stuff, that was convenient because we had a massive tornado, that like a F1 tornado that hit our neighborhood. Luckily, none of the houses were damaged, but the trees were fucked. So my front lawn tree had actually gotten busted, so I utilized that. And the crater is actually a fireplace where we have bonfires where my dad does a lot of cleaning up the bushes and stuff down the hill. So we just utilize that as well, where it's kind of wrapped in a tinfoil and kind of implodes. A joke like that's right out of Nostalgia Critic, where he's like, oh, I'll review this now. And the transition, that's totally Lego Star Wars right then and there. So, yeah, it was just basically kind of coming up with a way of how do we get the Empire to Earth, and how do we do it in a way where, because I saw JonTron Starcade, and I was taking a little bit of influence from that as well, of how this all kind of functioned. So, I used, a lot of people thought, like, which print of the original unaltered versions... Exactly. Which ones did I use? I originally wanted to use the despecialized editions, but because in of itself it's artificially made, it didn't feel right, so I wanted to use original film prints. So I looked online and found there is a silver screen edition of the original Star Wars and the Grindhouse editions of Empire and Jedi, and those are that's the footage, the prints I used. Nick Jackson of Jackson Knight Productions, he really wanted to be involved with this, so we gave him a little cameo on the Kaiju Guard, where he's part of sort of that Ultraman powers as the Empire kind of sabotages the satellite and kind of takes it over. There's a little gimmick there, but we're kind of teasing, is it the Empire and is it not? And then, boom, right there. That's a great shot of just the Star Destroyer approaching the skyline, the TIE Fighters coming in. So, they've pretty much taken over my entire base of operations and the entirety of Toronto, Ontario, and Earth in general. They've just decided, fuck it, we're invading, we don't care what people think. These robots, a lot of people wonder about these security robots, they were basically leftovers that Dr. Terawatt left my character as sort of a security measure, so they don't last too long, they're pretty useless. But they were just sort of a nice little distraction to say, hey, how do you get it where the stormtroopers come in and mimic the scene of Episode 4? I do like this shot with Darth Vader's shadow with the sun. Perfect natural lighting right there. With Android 18, obviously because she is a recurring character on the show, we had to utilize her somehow. So she's sort of a mix of our Princess Leia with a bit of the droids from Episode 4. So she's sort of a mix of those two combined into one because, hey, she's an android, so why not be a droid? I just realized how fucking cluttered my old room was. I'm so glad I just finally moved. It was just something I had to do. And I got rid of a lot of that stuff, too. So, obviously, all of this is mimicking a mix of Rebels when Darth Vader shows up and Rogue One, and a little awkward walk there because it was kind of hard to kind of get through that door. And, of course, we have my buddy Logan, a.k.a. Huey Tumor of Huey's Animated Movie Reviews as Darth Vader, or the voice. And the way it was going about, we didn't know how we were going to do it, who we were going to get. And I told Logan about my ideas, and he said, I could do a pretty good James Earl Jones impression, so he sent me an audition, audio audition of what he could do, and I was thoroughly impressed with his voice impression, so we brought him on, and he has been the voice of Darth Vader, not just for this trilogy, but the prequels. So, again, this is all mimicking Rogue One, and we were kind of on the wire of shooting, because a lot of the people we were working with were on a time crunch, because there were a lot of changes going on in our lives at the time, so we kind of just had to rush a lot of this. And luckily, some of these even finished for the prequels, so we've gotten a lot of stuff done on their end. But there wasn't much space to work with, and we were kind of losing light and figuring out how it all works, because we want the idea the power was out, but we also want to make sure we had enough light so we can see the actors. And some of these shots, the actor who's playing Vader, whoever's in the suit that day, would have to stand on a stepladder to make himself look taller, even though some continuity is where we're both the same size. But the idea is that Vader is supposed to be a taller, menacing threat. So, obviously here I'm mocking the fact that Vader pokes at people, and why is he alive, and all of this is all the stuff of why he's been resurrected, essentially, will be explained in the prequel trilogy, but we're not going to give it away just yet. So there's a lot of puns here. You're a puppet than Yoda, Disney's resurrecting you, because at the time, this is kind of before and after The Last Jedi came out, where that movie just was so 180 of what it was trying to be with Star Wars and the rules and the mythology that we didn't know what was going to happen. So was this like a smart move for Star Wars, or was it just a marketing thing for Disney because of their politics? We didn't know at the time, so we were just like pretty much riding it on the seat of our pants on what we wanted to do here. So the idea is that Vader does serve, Gablor is the one who resurrected Darth Vader along with the rest of the Sith Empire. I love that joke. We found this droid in the armory, and again, this all kind of fuses the whole trilogy together, where, like, if they did, the idea would be, like, the Empire invades Alderaan, they capture the Princess, Boba Fett takes her to Jabba, and that leads into the droids going to Tatooine to find Luke Skywalker. Sort of, like, kind of abridging it all into one story. And, yeah, I don't know, I just wanted to include Jabba, because I know the 501st guys in Toronto who do a lot of stuff for Comic-Con, so they were a huge help. And it was cool to have, like, a couple of Clone Trooper suits handy, which, story about that, I have the helmets, but I had no way of building the suits, so the day after Halloween, when everything was on discount at Party City, they had these really good Stormtrooper outfits that were, like, half off, and Angry Joe had used it in his Battlefront 2 review, so we utilized those, and just, you know, to cut costs, we just bought them the day after Halloween. In fact, since this trilogy, we've bought more Clone Trooper helmets off discount, and more Stormtrooper helmets, so we're gonna get more Stormtroopers and Clone Troopers in the prequel trilogy. So I love how I have to switch from, like, the silver screen edition to the 2004 DVD version, which I just want to point out, I know a lot of people, including one podcast who did commentary on this, on my original trilogy reviews, had really taken a hit, like a little insult, the fact I don't like the special editions. It's not that I don't like them, I think they are actually pretty impressive. But, because, I mean, even I saw the special editions when they came out in theaters, but the problem is that I just hate the fact that they erased history. They erased the original version. I hate it when studios do that, where they get rid of the original theatrical versions that people grew up with. And that's why I'm so kind of protested until Disney decides to finally get their heads out of their ass and Lucasfilm to just release them and let them be more accepted. I'm gonna have a tangent with this shit. So, of course, we have Rice Duke, a.k.a. Eric, as our Jedi Master Obi-Wan, and he shows up later in the Empire episode. I love the force slap that he gives me when I bring up the midichlorian accounts, because it's one of the things about the prequels that I don't like is the midichlorians, and that sound effect is actually an Indiana Jones punch, because, I mean, I do love all the sound effects Ben Burtt had made for Lucasfilm from Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and even Willow. There's a lot of great sound effects in the library at Lucasfilm, so I try to use as many as I can. And then, obviously, here again, I'm just bitching about the special editions. And it leads to, obviously, a parody that mimics the scene in Return of the Jedi, where Luke is about to strike Vader down. Now, the Sword of Light, which is a prop that has been through many evolutions, it was a Nerf sword, it was a foam sword, then it's a real sword. I guess the idea is that, like, we're gonna try to explain where, like, this sword can just kind of take different forms, and it can, like, turn into different blades. It just depends on the mood and the matter of which I put it down, because I think that's sort of the idea with it, is that it takes different shapes. It's sort of like, it's like Frieza. So Gabler appearing here, this is the first time that the hero and villain in the entire show actually finally meet face to face after a long time. And we realize, oh shit, he's still around, he's fully formed. This is a total Inuyasha move, where he's back to life. I'm back, bitches. I'm ready to take you out after our war from years ago. There's more to the storyline than a lot of people realize, and it's going to be explored more in later seasons. And credit has to be given to Thomas Lovekiyo, aka Harold of Vortis, who does an amazing job voicing Gabler. I know early on people had a little hard time understanding his voice, but as we were progressing on the show, we finally kind of narrowed down a voice where it's a little bit easier to understand. It's about enunciations and pronouncing stuff right. So obviously this is mimicking when Luke sees his hand and then, like, turns the lightsaber off and confronts the Emperor. And right there, I just love that. I love it even in the riff tracks where Luke throws the lightsaber, you just hear, ow! But anytime I can use sound effects, so like the blade falling is actually sound effects from Rob Roy. Rob Roy has some great sword sound effects.
I am a true Star Wars fan.
So, interesting enough, a lot of people ask about the shirt. Where did I get the shirt? And the answer is, I don't know. It was a gift from one of my best friends. And since, like, I think the Dragon Ball Evolution episode, or whatever, I've lost that shirt, and that sucks. Because that is like the iconic BigJackFilms shirt, but I'm looking everywhere to make replicas, and I'm having a very hard time figuring out where I can get that made, because that is an iconic shirt for my character. So again, there was a lot of innovation shots. I love the shot where, you know, it kind of goes in and out. It's just, obviously, Gablor's on a green screen and interacts with me. And this was before I had the ability to do digital lightsaber effects, so a lot of the lightsaber effects are either in camera using the Force Effects lightsabers, or I had to do hand keyframe animation turning on the lightsaber. And let me tell you, doing lightsaber keyframe animation is a fucking bitch. It is a pain in the ass. So with the prequels coming up, I actually do have a guy, IndiFan, Brock McGinnis, who does all of my lightsaber effects now, and he is so good at getting them done so damn quickly. Huge props that some people can get them done faster than I can. So, obviously this joke with the sand, I figured, how am I going to get out of this situation? And I thought, well, what if I had just had a pocket sand I could just throw at Darth Vader? That's become a meme now, pocket sand. So, finding the digital effect to make that work was hard, and I didn't want to hit the helmet without damaging it. So, there you go, obviously another jab at the prequels. Now, this bit is funny, because this is right out of the Star Wars Holiday Special, which I do kind of admire in some regards, where the Stormtrooper trips over his own gun, and this is an idea Josh had, where when he falls, he would make the sound effects that Yosemite Sam makes in a Looney Tunes cartoon. He's so adamant about, like, getting that going, so I thought that was hilarious that we added that. So, I love that he's doing the whole, I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to rescue you. And then we cut to this scene, which is right out of The Force Awakens. And honestly, out of the entire sequel trilogy, I still do enjoy The Force Awakens. And these shots when they first see the Falcon, I love that sequence. It's a really good scene. And this is right out of Shrek, where it's like, you didn't slay the dragon? It's on my to-do list. We were basically channeling that energy, sort of the campy Marvel comedic humor to a lot of movies nowadays to give it sort of a banter. This is actually a split-screen shot with 2 actors as the Stormtroopers and 1 actor on the side because we didn't have enough extras and enough Stormtrooper costumes, so we had to double it and triple it by basically doing a mix of split-screen and green screen, and it's a good way to kind of get more armies in your battle sequence, especially if you're on a condensed budget. Now, that's a good shot, actually, that I think Josh came up with, where it's like, let's see some troopers guarding, and it's like, oh, a little banter here and there. And one thing I will say is that, yeah, the Darth Vader suit you can kind of see through, and the visor's a little high up. But the Falcon set, this is something a lot of people wonder, is okay, so the Falcon set is actually cardboard and Christmas lights, mostly. We took a few elements from some other tutorials on YouTube, and we even included things like cans and bottle caps for extra buttons, and the control panel is nothing but game controllers, because with Josh being very much a gamer on YouTube, we wanted to incorporate that somehow. I love a lot of people point out to the little egg carton on the side, because I was trying to replicate the look of the Falcon set, and it was very difficult to do, and eventually what happened was we were going to bring this back for the prequels, the set, but by the time we pulled it out of storage, it was rotted away, so we just destroyed it, and then the prequels were getting a huge upgrade. So that's why we kind of wrote ourselves in where the Falcon actually is going through renovations, and especially after the fact Josh stole the Falcon. So everything's getting an upgrade in the prequels. When it comes to the USB, that is a plot point that has been kind of going through as this little MacGuffin thing that I use everything for, and it's even utilized in the 100th episode. It has a lot of data and memory on it, so it's got the prequels, or the original trilogy on there for me to review as I travel. So, yeah, it was just cool to build that Falcon set. We shot that for a day. Josh was very impressed with it. He was like, oh my god, there's no way he built a Falcon set, but we did. It's a little wobbly, but that's sort of the charm. It's sort of a Super 8 looking set in a way. And again, we wanted to actually do a new set for the prequels, but it just became too complicated, so we just basically found a new way to do the Falcon in the prequel trilogy. So now we're going to the Empire Strikes Back segment, and obviously the Empire has pretty much conquered the entire city of Toronto and most of the planet, keeping it kind of held hostage. And we have obviously a scene from Empire where where Darth Vader comes across the Emperor on the hologram, but in this case it is the Lord Gablor, who has revived not only Darth Vader but the Sith Knights. Basically, he's running the show until maybe somebody else comes along. We're gonna have to see with the prequels. A lot of this also, in terms of how it's shot, is taken from the interesting film called To Boldly Flee, where you have Spoonie and Rob doing a scene out of Empire, where it's shot the same way with green screen, so we kind of just took more of the technical aspects of how they shot it. And a lot of stuff, there was just a lot of green screen on this trilogy, which I know one of the criticisms I've gotten is that the effects are pretty wonky, and we're definitely rectifying that in the prequels, where we're going to be using more models and more practical effects. We used a lot of digital trickery on this one. So we're kind of hinting of, like, where the story is, why Vader's back, and why, where is George Lucas during all of this? And there's sort of this feeling that George Lucas is sort of this entity of the entire Star Wars universe, that a lot of the characters are like, oh, right, Lucas created us, and we don't know where he's at. So, obviously, I do kind of like these shots, how they all came out, because it's basically using transparency effects and chroma key, and also adding sort of a blue filter to the character to kind of make it more of a hologram, and it's a very reddish blue hologram, so it makes it more like hellish, whereas most of the good characters have more of a blue lighting to their holograms, and spiritual essence and force ghosts and so on, which, again, we are updating in the prequels. So, this was something that Logan came up with, where in the script there was no hint that Vader was going to try to convert BigJackFilms to join the dark side, and obviously that was not the case. It was just something he wanted to add in, and I thought, oh, okay, well, no harm in that. We're already mimicking Empire, we might as well, to just kind of add more of what we're kind of spoofing here. Now, when we get to Rice Duke on this planet where he's kind of in exile, sort of like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, we originally wanted it to be Hoth. We wanted it to be like an ice planet, but because of scheduling, by the time we got to shooting it, the ice had completely melted and the snow was going away outside of the ice pond. That is the same swamp area. I call it the Skull Island Swamp for a reason, because it's the same place we shot the swamp scene in Kong, and it's a very cool location where I used to live that we utilize as much as we can. So in this case, it was more just to do sort of a training sword fight on the ice. And so we wanted it originally to be Hoth, and again, because of the weather, we couldn't do it. So we kind of went for a planet that's kind of new, where it's sort of a mix of Hoth and Dagobah, where it's a mix of this sort of swampy ice planet. I don't know if there's any planets in Star Wars that are like that, but if there is, let me know in the comments. If there is sort of a swampy ice planet, that will definitely be utilized. If not, we'll have to make up one. Maybe it's just a kind of a dumb planet, basically, where a bunch of people go just to hide. So this was a mix of obviously Eric in the Jedi robes, but then we had to come back to do my solo shots, and I realized I need a body double there for Eric when he wasn't available. So I got Brad to take over in some cases. So this was just fun to do this, sort of like these two characters have actually had a history, because obviously Eric is a Jedi Master / YouTube reviewer who's done like Game of Thrones reviews and so on. So again, banter, it's always fun. And where Eric's base is, his little hut, his little tree hut, it is sort of like the Endor village in Return of the Jedi, but also more of Obi-Wan's hut in Episode 4. And it's sort of mimicking that. But what's interesting is that in the forest, there was a couple of our neighbors who were building this sort of tree fort out in the middle of nowhere. It's very Sherwood Forest-esque. And so we decided, well, why don't we utilize that? And they had built it just brand new with better wooden construction. So while they were gone, we kind of snuck on and kind of shot there to make it look really cool. It's a really cool location and set.
If he has indeed returned.
Again, this is sort of meant to represent the history of the Great War, which is something we were hinting at since the G.I. Joe Retaliation review back in 2017. And it's funny, because since the pandemic, we've written ourselves in a corner where we kind of can't get out of this idea of this war coming back. So we're still going to do it no matter what. It just means storylines and episodes are going to take a little longer to put together.
Retake the planet.
So obviously, we have to have my character learn to become a Jedi and use the Force, which he does have within him, because he is... My character is very much a very high, powerful entity that hasn't really fully been unlocked or has been hidden away for 15 years and since the war last happened. And so, a lot of this, again, is sort of from Episode 4, you must learn the ways of the Force, and come with me to Alderaan. And a lot of people actually ask, why does my voice switch out from, like, British to Canadian / American? That's mostly because I guess the idea is the character is trying to come out of it. It was totally unintentional, but looking at it in the mistakes, you can take a mistake and fix it and just say he's just trying to break back into his old self in a way. This is one of those scenes that is right out of The Last Jedi, because, look, The Last Jedi, I think, does take too much of a 180 with changes to Star Wars, but it does have its moments. I still, regardless of what you think about the entire saga, I like everything Star Wars. I'm not gonna be as bitchy and complaining as most hardcore religious fans are, where I just enjoy it just for the entertainment value, and if it does something I don't like, it's just a nitpick. It doesn't really affect it. Even the prequels, a lot of people are concerned I'm gonna bitch about them, but I actually am gonna give them a fair shot in a way. So, there's a sword fight coming up here, which was pretty cool. It's right out of Batman Begins. I'm just gonna be up front right then and there, where we wanted to shoot a lightsaber duel on the ice, which I don't think any Star Wars movie has ever done. And what's interesting is that we filmed it, we had lightsaber props specifically made for the scene, but the biggest issue was the ice was thin and any one of us could have fallen in. It was thawing out. So there's Josh, he was actually skating around with the camera, getting some really unique shots, and that's why you get some really good dollies, because he's just skating with the camera. So skate camera, a skate dolly. And these effects were provided by a couple of people I reached out to who were able to help me to make it very quick because I didn't want to spend too much time on the effects. But with the prequels, we got a faster way of producing these kind of shots. Now, a lot of people want to know about, hey, where did you get the Kenner action figures? I've been collecting Kenner action figures since high school because my science teacher came up to me one day and said, hey, do you like Star Wars? I said, yeah, and he says, well, my kids have all these toys they don't want. So, eventually what happened was he comes in with 2 bins full of original Kenner stuff, and so I have the majority of the original figures, including playsets, like the Ewok playset and some of the ships and everything. It's really cool. So, honestly, this is a nod to, like, Toy Story. I don't know, I just wanted to utilize the toys somehow, because one little short film, or like a long feature I'm a big fan of secretly, is the Fine Brothers film, G.I. Joe, the Epic Saga, which I want to cover someday because it is a film that is kind of, like, not allowed to be shown, but I want to bring it up anyway. That meditation bit was just basically doing some Naruto training shit, and we just were kind of doing some anime-based stuff. Which, by the way, I have seen Star Wars Visions, and it actually is really good. It is recommended. I do like the Star Wars anime stuff. So, obviously, we wanted sort of that Yoda lifting the X-Wing moment in the training, but in this case, obviously, we didn't have access to an X-Wing, so we thought, well, what would be a suitable replacement? We thought, well, why not a lightsaber in the ground and sort of this Elder Saber, which is the Yoda lightsaber, kind of underneath the ice. So the idea is I use the Force to lift the ice and get the lightsaber out. So it's a mix of shooting the pond with some digital cracks and then cutting to actually my hot tub, which is a lot heater with a bit more of the heat and the bubbling to make it more like the Force is kind of moving the water, and basically using a fishing line to make the lightsaber pop out. Pretty interesting effects. It was very tricky to do. And I actually love this shot where you can see the moon in the corner. That kind of adds more to the idea that this is a seclusive planet. Now, obviously, one thing that's really cute is my dog Timber is our Chewbacca. She has been a huge supporting character, and I try to utilize her however I can. So it was just cool to have her on as our Chewbacca character, having banter with Josh, which was actually came up with some pretty funny dialogue. I'll admit, this is one effect I don't like, is doing that lightsaber turn on, because as I turn it on, it goes to a stilt frame. I'm not good at framing. Now, I'm not going to do a special edition, but I do think that was a bit of a trouble. Now, the reason the continuity is a little flunky here with the hood on and off is because that was Brad standing in for that one shot, and so we basically had to just hide it, his head with that. Now, this is obviously hinting to the Dragon Ball Evolution review, and on top of that, that whole, like, Crystal is the heart of the bleed moment, that was right out of the 2D Clone Wars, which I do really like. I do like the stuff with in those shorts. Now, originally, in the script, the idea was that Eric was going to join the battle at the end, where he was going to join up with the Jedi and bring them all with us. But unfortunately, Eric's schedule did not allow him to attend the event, so we basically decided to have him stay on the planet, and he will eventually return in the prequels at full force to kind of make up for the loss of that moment. So, obviously, I had to find a way to end the Empire episode, so we came up with the idea we fly off to find the 18 on Endor, but then cut to the very end, you have Yoda as a Force Ghost, and this puppet was provided by Brad, who has the interactive Yoda. We just filmed it on blue screen and just added a blue filter and a bit of a transparency, and it actually works really well. I do the voice of Yoda in this bit, which is really funny, and we just wanted to end with a poo joke because, everybody likes a good poo joke. So then we actually cut to something here because this is a storyline compilation to Brad's review of Rogue Squadron, which I would highly recommend. And the reason we came up with this because we just had a little bit of spare time in between episodes, and I just asked Brad, for the 16-bit show, do you want to do a Star Wars review? And he's like, yeah, sure. So we did Rogue Squadron, because might as well get that off the list. That's a great game. And it kind of makes you think, okay, how did Brad show up? And so we thought, well, he's playing the Rogue Squadron game, that was his training, and now he comes back and he comes in as our top hotshot X-Wing pilot. Basically, if Porkins was actually cool. Now, it's kind of interesting to have, I had to help him out with some of the shots and filming this, so I had to come in with his R2 unit. I had to come in and help him film some of this stuff. It was pretty easy to kind of put all together. So, I actually helped edit the scene for him to make it easier for him. I do like that shot. That's a pretty impressive shot. That was sort of a last-minute scene we did. So, I also do like doing hologram projections. Those are also really fun to put together.
How do you expect me to drive an X-Wing?
So the idea is, also, he runs in the which leads to the prequels, he's going to be doing the Nintendo Squadron, which is a series of X-Wings that are not only at his command, but are piloted by a bunch of Nintendo characters, because obviously Brad is a big gamer reviewer on YouTube, and he also does obscure media, so we're going to kind of incorporate that. So basically, yeah, they're just taking off from, there's a Walmart he works at, that he just flies off and takes off in his digital X-Wing. Now, some of these shots of him in the pilot seat, you can start to tell, especially as we move on with the prequels and the effects get better, could have been done better, but these are fine. These are pretty fun. I can't wait you'll have to see where these guys go when we get to the final battle. Now we cut to Return of the Jedi with the Endor system, and this stuff is mimicking when Kenobi comes to to Utapau on episode 3. This bit is funny, because this joke's gonna make a callback in episode 1 with, Josh shifting gears and moving the ship where we all fall over. It's a pretty fun scene. We try to add as much comedy as possible. Now, coming up is a bit that I am actually... It's kind of the worst effects in the episode, but because we were on a time crunch and I really wanted to incorporate this was the only way to do it, and that, of course, being 18 in the Slave Leia with Jabba. Now, the Jabba we wanted to use with the 501st unfortunately did not move its mouth. It could move its eyes, but could not move its mouth, and that was something I was kind of picky about. So I looked into other sources, and there is another 501st group that does have a movable Jabba puppet, so we utilize that for the dialogue bits, but the rest is the 501st Jabba. And at Fan Expo, I just got a bunch of background plates of the creature, and it actually came out really well. If you tighten it and condense it, you can make some really good shots here. So all of this is the 501st. So, again, some of these effects I wish could be done better, but because we were on a time crunch, and the effects were very tricky. I would have shot my part on green screen, but because my character's cape is green, it would have bled through. It would have been awful. So we instead went with a crappy blue screen, and that's why it looks awful. Now, obviously, the banter between me and 18 here is actually mimicking the It's a Trap Family Guy special of Return of the Jedi, where, Chris is trying to, 3PO please, and then he just falls into the Rancor. Obviously, we couldn't do the Rancor because of time, but so instead we had 18 just fry Jabba to oblivion, and it actually came out really funny. I had to look up how I could find, a deep-fried Jabba, so I just typed it in, and all I found was, burger meat that looked like Jabba the Hutt, and I just added it into the shot, and it looked really cool. Now, outside of Darth Vader being resurrected, we also have Boba Fett is back, and technically he does survive all the stuff in the book of Boba Fett, so either he is still the same Boba, or he is a resurrected clone of Boba Fett that does the Empire's bidding. So that was something I wanted to add too. On top of that, Boba will come back in the prequels. We have plans for that. Obviously, the Jabba's Palace did have a lot of hentai stuff, so I had to add a joke there, and you can see Josh's eyebrows raise up in that moment. Now, this chase scene is interesting. This actually is taken from an episode of all things Muppet Babies, which does they did a ton of Star Wars parodies back in the day, and in one of their episodes, Muppet Babies The Next Generation, which is a nod to Star Trek, there's a scene where Han and Chewie rescue an Ewok from Jabba, and they are chased through the Endor field with the Falcon and a few speeder bikes. Now, obviously I had TIE fighters and shit, but it was meant to utilize sort of that idea that there could be a chase like that with the Falcon. And it's something kind of new and creative, but taking from a source of a parody. And it actually works really well. Like, a lot of this is utilized. Now, this was an idea Josh had where, as the chase is going on, we were kind of brainstorming it, and then he's like, and then all of a sudden Sala shows up and says, "Hello, Whitney!" And I was like, oh, I'm gonna utilize that. So coming up with that was pretty funny, where, like, during the middle of this chase, Sala just, like, sees Han Solo and thinks it's Indiana Jones as a little joke nod to the actors playing the same part. So, a mix of these scout troopers are a mix of green screen actors and models using the Kenner toys, which were kind of utilized in a couple of shots. I try to be as practical as possible, because I do have a lot of models of the Star Wars ships, and I use the Action Fleet line. The Action Fleet line, in my opinion, have the best vehicle toys for the movies, because they look really detailed, so I utilize them however I can. So I do like the fact that the Millennium Falcon goes through 2 trees, and the Slave 1 kind of just passes through that and kind of crashes. So it's just a fun little action scene to kind of put together. It was, like, really fun to come up with a couple of jokes, and eventually that does lead into the segments for Return of the Jedi. Anytime you could match what they did in the movies is great, and obviously, yeah, sort of like the excellent Bill and Ted sort of dynamic between these two characters, that they've had fun! They had fun while kicking ass, it's great.
Let's get a move on.
So obviously with 18 being my waifu, I wanted to make a joke about, Josh has a thing for the chick from Evangelion, so I kind of had to utilize that and kind of fire back at him. Like, hey, you're gonna complain about me and my android? Complain about your blue-haired android chick from Evangelion. So, obviously I can't show the review of Jedi, but here you can kind of see, like, there's a lot of segments. There's a couple of jokes in that review I really like. I would recommend checking that out. Now we get to the final battle with the Rebel Alliance teaming up to basically join with the Jedi to liberate Earth from the Empire. Now, obviously the Jedi, since Episode 9, you guess could have reforged itself, so there are only a few Jedi available who could help out, and it's going to lead to this massive battle. So how did this battle come about? Well, again, it kind of comes from the idea that there is no Star Wars movie has ever done a big Braveheart-esque Lord of the Rings battle where these characters are fighting in this massive sort of battlefield with Jedi and Sith with lightsabers. Like, how have we not done that yet outside of the Old Republic? These shots of these Star Wars cosplayers were from Comic-Con. I just gathered a few of them in a corner of the convention, and we picked this environment because of the lighting and the background, because it looks like a Rebel ship. So we utilized that with the holograms. Now, the whole joke of, like, oh, we got Rebels to get information, that was a nod to Rogue One, so I just told Josh, could you just do a little fourth wall joke regarding Rogue One? Anytime we get, like, look, Rogue One, I think, out of the entire trilogy or the entire Disney era Star Wars is the best. So obviously it is hinting at the whole Jedi versus Sith war that we're going to be seeing. So, yeah, it's sort of the idea that, like, it's something I've always wanted to see in a Star Wars movie, and something I always tell people is that whenever they have their expectations and their in-head fanfiction of whatever the next installment's gonna be, instead of getting really upset about it not coming to fruition and Disney not doing it, why not just do it yourself? Like, make it yourself. Put that vision to life. So that's essentially what I did, and it was a lot of trial and error doing this whole fight scene. We kind of had storyboards and animatics, but not enough to kind of figure out what we were shooting. A lot of it was, again, kind of pulled out of our ass, essentially, in how we shot it. So, and how we, like, intercut with characters doing what. I did write a script, but I had no structure in how it was going to be put together, so it was really all through the editing. And sometimes, obviously, without extras, I had to do stuff myself, so you have 3 versions of me as Jedis, but I tried to match it differently where they all look different. So, obviously, that's a great shot because I had to kind of time it right with these kids that were at the event where I would jump, then they would jump, and I would kind of make sure to kind of jump cut and add effects to make it look like we did, like, sort of a super anime jump there. So now we get to the whole mix of the battle on the ground and also the battle on air. So we have, like, obviously Rebel forces moving in to retake the city, and meanwhile TIE fighters are interfering, and there's, like, crashes and space battles, and, like it's a dogfight in the city, which is really cool. I do like this kind of stuff. And again, anytime, when we were shooting this battle scene, I just told Josh, do the dialogue and just add some jokes. Like, come up with something funny that I wouldn't even think of. And he would come up with a few ideas, like this Evangelion joke. Anytime he could make an Evangelion joke, he would, because Evangelion had made a huge comeback around the 2017, 2018 when we were shooting. So some of my favorite shots are actually just cutting from the skyline, panning down or up to the ground battle. So that was the first test, but my favorite shot in this trilogy is coming up. Now, outside of Nick doing some lightsaber stuff on his end, and the amount of Jedi extras we had Kirito from Sword Art Online. He joined the battlefield, and not many people knew about that. So, we had this huge event. There were these lightsaber flash mobs that they were doing for a couple of years, mostly before the next installment came out, so we utilized that, and we filmed 2 years worth of battle sequences of these events, and kind of spliced them together, knowing where we were going to put the shots. The first time was sort of a like let's just make it up as we go, but then the second time we were well prepared to get the dynamic shots we wanted. But then when we had to come back for character moments, for pickups, we shot it in a parking lot where I lived on Canada Day, so we were getting fireworks in the backgrounds and stuff, and it was just me and a couple people shooting the solo fight scenes to kind of splice in between. But yeah, we just want this is massive, epic battle with like 200 extras and Jedi. It's awesome. And there's like a giant planet thing in the background. It was actually a really cool time. That's one of my favorite shots. The wide shots are amazing, and to get that amount of people. So the way that went about is I just said, okay, anybody with a red lightsaber go over here. Anybody with a blue, purple, or green saber go over here. And I had a megaphone. I said, okay guys, on my mark, you're just gonna charge, we're gonna set up cameras. I said, action, we blew a bullhorn, and they all went at it. It was crazy time doing that. And we just went to town and shot some really cool stuff, and there were some background plates I had to get to add some stuff like these stormtroopers with the Wilhelm scream, which I always love to use. And there were a couple people in there, like people who wouldn't notice. There is a Kirito cosplayer, there's a Rey cosplayer, meaning Rey was part of the battle, and that's my friend Stephanie, who does the best Rey cosplay I've ever seen. So this is all reshoots at the parking lot, and kind of tightening it where you wouldn't even notice that there's no extras in the background. I do like that joke. How has nobody tried to kick Darth Vader in the balls and not make the joke about it being metal and it would just hurt your hand like a bulletproof thing? And then making a joke, oh wow, you don't have the high ground, because your dick and balls are gone, Vader, sorry. You know, like, I think that's one of the reasons maybe why Vader's so angry. That's a way you can pretty much get an instant death if you just go for the Darth Vader's jugular. So, yeah, it was just cool to kind of do that. And now coming up here is my favorite shot, where we showed the battle below, and we pan up to the special effects. I did the shot myself. I love it. Mix of the sound, the music timing, it's a perfect transitional shot. That is my favorite shot in the entire trilogy that we did. Like, just such an epic shot. Like, really cool to do those kind of dynamic moments. So obviously Brad being a huge gamer, and the Nintendo Squadron, we had it where the Star Fox guys come in, do a barrel roll, and he turns around and stuff. So basically it's a mix of digital and CGI effects to kind of match up and put it all together so we can kind of like get a bunch of different stuff. Some of the wide spaceships actually are models, but a lot of the wide ones are digital that I did find off YouTube. Now this joke, he says, you know, good shot, but that was a bad one-liner. That's sort of a little Wallace and Gromit moment from the movie where it's like, lovely food, for rabbits that is, and Gromit's just like, yeah, that's a bad joke. So again, going back to reshoots, we had some stuff of just our the hero villain coming together. Now that is Gablor. A lot of people think, well, who is this guy? It is Gablor. He's just got a battle helmet ready to go to fight to the death of my character. And I do like the idea that he carries a cross saber, the Kylo Ren lightsaber. And I originally wanted it to have fire and flames to make it more unique, but we went with what we got because it looked cool. So it was just coming up with these little fight choreography scenes and doing a lot of ingenuity of how we shot it, because some of it actually is also... we took some tutorials off YouTube of how to cheap lightsaber fights. I do like these shots from the first year we did it, where we had like the big planet in the background, like it was a hologram. So obviously we have some of the fighters falling behind, and then obviously, you know, hey, with 18 free, where is she at during this whole fight? So obviously she comes in, flies in, and can take out TIE fighters easily with a Destructo Disc. I mean, she can fly, she can go at high jet fighter speed, and she has energy beams that she could cut through stuff, so why not have her utilized where she could take out TIE fighters? And I think that's actually pretty fucking awesome. Like, that's amazing. And also, with the Earth being invaded, you'd think the army, the world's army would try to come in and help, so we have some Canadian Marines come in and bring their jet fighters in to shoot down enemy TIE fighters right at Independence Day. So this stuff is also cool. Just have the whole world and universes unite in this massive battle. I love how behaved Timber was in the cockpit. She was really good, well behaved doing those sequences. So some of these, when we were doing the fight scenes, we had to do it, rehearse it slowly, but because we were on a time crunch doing a whole night shoot, we were up till like 6 a.m. filming this stuff. We kind of had to cheat a little bit by speeding up the footage or tightening it down to make the fight more dynamic. In the prequels, we're going to have much better sword fights down the line. And obviously this stuff I like. This is right out of a spaghetti western, right out of The Good, and the Bad, and the Ugly. It's like a showdown, a stare down with these characters. And I'm fighting 2 of them. Like, that's pretty impressive that I can not only fight the greatest evil with the Dark Lord, but I can also fight Darth Vader at the same time. Like, this stuff is pretty fun when you look at it all together. That, you know, obviously I'm using the Elder Saber and the Skywalker Saber, which is also my sword, doubles as my sword. And then there's a lockdown. Obviously you have to do the whole use the Force moment from Episode 4. And it's funny, this is the first time we actually get my character's true name, Eldor the Eldorian. Well, he is an Eldorian, which is an entity being of humans from, like, another realm, but he is known as Eldor in a past life, but he goes by BigJackFilms in this era. So yeah, we just had to do this whole, like, use the Force moment. I love the colors in my armor, too. My armor is just sports armor covered in aluminum, like aluminum coating. And it's a very cheap way to make armor, and I found it's the best technique I have in terms of creating that kind of stuff. So obviously, I didn't want to keep Yoda's saber for too long, and had it ultimately destroyed here. Now what's interesting, when we finished filming these fights, by the time the whole saga wrapped, my Skywalker lightsaber, which had been with me since the release of Episode 3 in 2005, I loved that thing to death. And by the time that happened, it broke. And I sold it before it got worse, and now we're going to be utilizing different ways to do the effects. Now, this is obviously meant to show that that is not Anakin in the suit. It's somebody else who has taken the mantle of Darth Vader. It's an imposter. It's somebody else. But for some reason, he has the same powers and abilities. So you wonder, who is this guy? And we leave that open for the prequel trilogy. So you will see Darth Vader's true identity in probably Episode 3. That's when you'll be seeing that moment. So doing again the final confrontation in the saga between Gablor and BigJackFilms. This was something obviously we wanted to do too. These shots are mimicking Darth Maul's fight with Kenobi in the Clone Wars. And this is sort of the cheating stuff where you just pretend you're fighting and you just have to match it. And I just added some flashes to make it look like they were fighting. It is a very cheap, easy way to get sword fights done fast and on the quick, especially if you don't have time for commentary. You just set up the camera where you can easily fool the audience. And obviously, Gablor does have Sith Lightning, because why not? The idea with Gablor in this plot is that he's resurrected the Sith Knights to take control of not only the Empire, but to gain the confidence of the Sith Empire and the Sith Knights to join his army of villains and baddies for later on in the Great War. Because why not have Sith armies at your disposal? Obviously, the Rebels do have backup, and this is where Gablor miscalculated. There wasn't enough backup on his end to fight the bad guys, so it kind of leads to this whole thing where a lot of the fleet is taken out. So it was really cool to see, like, the Rebels did make a pretty decent strike with the Empire. I do love this stuff. This is right out of Crouching Tiger when Jade Fox retreats, where it's like, this is not over, legal bye, but here it's like, oh, this is just starting. The war is back, baby. And I love the way the suit actor we have does that, where he just disappears like a classic villain. I'll get you next time, Gadget. Great stuff. So, yeah, Gablor will return in the prequel trilogy. And obviously here, it's funny because people are like, well, why didn't Jack kill Vader? Why didn't he take his mask off? I think the idea is that maybe in some aspects, because of Vader's past history as Anakin Skywalker, he decides to let Vader retreat. He doesn't want to kick him when he's down, give him a chance to survive, show mercy. The idea of my character does show mercy in some aspects, so Vader does retreat to fight another day in the prequels. Unlike the Sith are kind of going back into hiding until the time's right. We're debating if we want to include them in the prequels for some later battles, but we'll have to see. So obviously all this is going, again, a lot of 2D Clone Wars influences in some of the shots and the way it's structured. So some of these Sith obviously surrender, and a lot of us win the day by the end. And coming back, I do like these shots where like the Republic forces kind of head back to a galaxy far, far away, and we wrap up with Eric and Josh in this storyline, because they were a huge help in the production. This is actually my cousin-in-law Jeff, as sort of our Obi-Wan Kenobi Jedi Master S. He has very much a likeness to Obi-Wan, so we kind of utilized that for the episode because we wanted to have different varieties of Jedi Knights. And this ending with these two is I kind of took a little bit from the Jungle Book, where it's the ending with like Baloo and Bagheera kind of riding off into the sunset to enjoy another day, basically, which is kind of fun. So, and there is sort of a nod that, oh yeah, Josh still has to return the Falcon back to Solo or Chewbacca or whoever runs it now at this time frame. Anytime we make references to other stuff in Star Wars is cool. I do like that one shot where they're just like taking off. Time to go home. It's fun. Now obviously this bit with the Barony Sunset, you can't do Star Wars without it. So my old place has like a ton of beautiful sunsets during the summer. So I wanted to utilize that as much as I could. So I shot this in a day, on tripod, locked down the camera, and just got some really nice shots with the sunset. And 18's there to kind of just say, hey, we're going to be okay. It's going to be fine. And we're going to be doing really well.
I'm afraid this battle...
And again, it kind of hinting at where the prequels are going to go eventually and where the war is going to happen with the storyline. Getting these two characters to hold hands was a pain in the ass, so I kind of hinted that they did. You know, a lot of people do say, oh, their relationship's actually kind of cute, and it will expand later on. And now this shot, obviously, going to Return to the Jedi with the fireworks and cutting to the Ewok celebration. Now, we wanted to do a big party scene like at the end of Jedi, but had no way of doing it. At the time I was producing the trilogy, and even at the time they were airing, this was the last bit we shot, which was, I was at Anime North 2018, and they have this huge rave on Saturday night. So we went ahead and took advantage of that. We got there super early, filmed the segments with me and Brad, and we had, obviously, the camera set up. Kendra, at the time, helped me do some camera work, but it was just more catching as many shots as we could with either Star Wars characters, cosplayers in this big party event where, hooray, we defeated the Empire, we're just mimicking the end of Jedi. So right here is obviously, you know, Luke and Han, and, like, reuniting, or Luke and Leia reuniting. There's a lot of that. There was an Ewok there, which was really fun, just to add that dynamic, and cut to R2-D2. So very much, shot for shot, the ending of Return of the Jedi. Even Harley Quinn's there joining the fun. She's been an established character as well. Now, obviously, we wanted to hint at the idea of the prequels, that they will be covered. So, obviously, this is meant to be Luke looking at the Force Ghost, but we had no Force Ghost, so I thought, why not have a disturbance in the Force? Why not BigJackFilms see something? And what he realizes, it's the prequels are calling his name. So we cut to this little basement in this little building, and then it's sort of a visionary area where it's in my basement. And this is right out of The Force Awakens when Rey finds the lightsaber. And instead of the lightsaber, I find the prequel trilogy. And I kind of, this was also an idea that Josh had too. How do we end the trilogy? And he thought, well, why not hit the idea that they're doing this, and instead you find the prequel DVDs. But the one thing he added at the end, because it was just going to be, oh, I see the prequels, oh no. But he thought of the idea, can you just end it where he basically, my character goes, Pooju! Like Sebulba does at the end of the pod race. I'm like, okay, that actually makes sense. So that's sort of how we wanted to end it, sort of on a joke, where, oh, they're gonna happen. They've just been taking a little longer to put together as unexpectedly as it was. Thank you, COVID. So, obviously I wanted to add a bunch of prequel memes, so like George going, oh, it's poetry, or, you know, Jar Jar's the key to all this, and I don't like sand. You see that in little flashes, and the one joke not many people use that in the documentaries on the Phantom Menace that me and Josh use is every time we think something's cool, we're like, that's gonna be great, it's gonna be great, it's gonna be great. And it's an exchange between Lucas and Spielberg on the set of Phantom Menace, so I wanted to end that vision like that. And we were trying to figure out how we were going to visualize it, so the idea of doing, like, sort of this spinning motion of, like, me getting a disturbance in the Force, and, again, this is all going to lead to the prequels, and they are coming. We are actually getting back into production this year, and we're going to be heavily focused on episodes 2 and 3. So, yeah, that really is it for this commentary. It's a lot of just discussing what went on in the making of the prequels. I might do a blooper reel. I might do a making of how we did it, a little bit more detail. Not 100% sure, but I did want to get something out for you guys on Star Wars Day, May the 4th, and with the Kenobi show. I'm actually really looking forward to that. But, I don't know, maybe I'll do some Star Wars stuff in between. We'll have to find out and see. But until the next video, guys, like, comment, subscribe, support us on Patreon. Special thanks to everybody who helped us out with this trilogy. This was a lot of fun to put together. So, until the next video, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys later. This is BigJackFilms signing off, saying, May the 4th be with you, and I'll catch you in whatever Star Wars does next. So, until next time, I will see you later.
Thank you.